The weeks following their wedding were filled with a mix of hope and struggle. Junior and Rita settled into their modest new life, but the reality of their situation quickly set in. With no financial support from Junior's father and only a small amount of help from Rita's mother, the young couple found themselves scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck. The final bell rang through the crowded halls of the secondary school, marking the end of an era for the students. While most of them buzzed with excitement, eagerly discussing their future plans, Junior sat quietly at his desk, a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. His classmates gathered in small groups, their laughter and chatter a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. The joy of graduation day seemed distant, overshadowed by the daunting reality he faced. Junior had once been like them, carefree, with dreams as wide as the sky. But life had taken a sudden, unexpected turn. He had fallen in love with Rita, a girl as young as he was, and they had married in a whirlwind of youthful passion and naivety. Now, she was pregnant, and the responsibilities of marriage and impending fatherhood weighed on him more than he had ever imagined. As the classroom began to empty, Michael, Junior's closest friend, noticed the tension in Junior's posture. Michael, always the one with a solution to every problem, approached with a casual grin, but his smile faded as he saw the serious look on Junior's face. Michael sat beside him, placing a hand on Junior's shoulder. "You've been quiet all day. What's going on?" he asked, his tone filled with concern. Junior struggled to find the words. How could he explain the suffocating fear that had gripped him since Rita announced her pregnancy? How could he describe the sense of being trapped in a situation far beyond his control? He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. "Mike, I don't know what to do," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Rita's pregnant, and everything's it's too much." Michael nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're both too young for this, Junior. We're just kids ourselves. You need to think about your future, our future. Graduation is just the first step. You can't let this situation hold you back." Junior looked down at his hands, guilt twisting his stomach into knots. He knew Michael was right. They were just kids, playing at being adults. But knowing that didn't make the reality any easier to bear. "What can I do?" Junior asked, his voice breaking. "I can't just leave her. She's my wife, and the baby." Michael leaned in closer, his voice firm but sympathetic. "You have to be practical, Junior. You can't take care of a family when you're still trying to figure out your own life. Look, we're graduating soon. This is our chance to start fresh. You need to think about what's best for everyone, including Rita and the baby." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Junior knew what Michael was suggesting, even if he couldn't bring himself to say it out loud. The idea of leaving Rita, of abandoning the life they had started together, was like a knife to his heart. But deep down, he also knew that Michael was right. They were too young, too inexperienced, and the burden of their choices was already crushing them. Days turned into weeks, and the time for graduation drew closer. Junior became increasingly distant, retreating into his thoughts as he wrestled with the decision that lay before him. Rita, unaware of the storm brewing in his mind, continued to prepare for the baby, her excitement and anticipation growing with each passing day. On the day of their graduation, while the other students celebrated their newfound freedom, Junior's heart was heavy with the knowledge of what he had to do. He and Michael had devised a plan, one that filled Junior with dread, but also with a sense of inevitability. After the ceremony, Junior would leave. He would go to work and never return home. The day passed in a blur. Junior moved through the motions, smiling for photos, shaking hands, and accepting congratulations, but all the while, his mind was elsewhere. When the ceremony finally ended, he found himself standing on the threshold of a decision that would change his life and Rita's forever. He went home that evening, the weight of his choice pressing down on him like a physical force. Rita greeted him with a smile, her hand resting on her swollen belly, but Junior could barely meet her eyes. He mumbled something about work and left the house, his steps heavy as if each one was pulling him deeper into a void. That was the last time he would see her. Junior went to work the next morning, just as he had told her he would, but instead of returning home, he disappeared. Days turned into weeks, and still, he did not come back. Rita waited, her hope slowly turning to despair as the reality of his abandonment set in. She was alone, pregnant, and abandoned by the one person she had thought she could rely on. As her due date approached, Rita's life became a blur of fear and loneliness. She struggled to make ends meet, relying on the kindness of neighbors and the occasional support from her mother, who traveled from her village to help her. The pain of Junior's absence was a constant ache in her chest, But she had no choice but to press on, for the sake of the child growing inside her. When the day finally came, Rita gave birth to a baby girl. It should have been a moment of pure joy, but the absence of Junior hung over the occasion like a dark cloud. She named the child Nena, after her own mother, hoping to find some comfort in the connection to her past. With Junior gone, Rita was forced to navigate the challenges of single motherhood on her own. The days were long and filled with hardship, but she pushed through, driven by her love for her daughter and the determination to give Nena the best life she could, even without a father. As the years passed, Rita's life gradually took on a new rhythm, though the pain of Junior's abandonment lingered like a shadow over her heart. She poured all her love and energy into raising her daughter, Nena, who had grown into a bright and curious child. The small apartment they lived in was modest, but it was filled with warmth and the laughter of a mother and daughter who had forged a deep bond in the absence of a father. Rita's mother had returned to her village, visiting when she could, but Rita was mostly on her own. To make ends meet, Rita took up various odd jobs, but it was never enough to fully escape the financial strain. Yet, through all the struggles, she remained resilient, determined to provide Nena with the best life she could, even in the face of adversity. It was during this time that Rita grew close to Lucy, a vibrant and ambitious young woman who lived in the same building. Lucy had moved to the city to pursue her dream of becoming a successful wedding planner, and her outgoing personality quickly made her popular in the neighborhood. Despite their different circumstances, Rita and Lucy struck up a friendship that grew deeper over time. Lucy, with her optimistic outlook and boundless energy, became a source of strength for Rita. Lucy admired Rita's quiet strength and determination, often marveling at how she managed to keep going despite everything. In turn, Rita found comfort in Lucy's company, appreciating the distraction from her own thoughts and the genuine care Lucy showed for Nena. One evening, as they sat in Lucy's apartment, watching Nena play with her toys on the floor, Lucy turned to Rita with a bright smile. "You know, I've got a big wedding coming up. It's one of the biggest clients I've ever had, and it's going to be the event of the year. I was thinking, maybe you could come with me. It'll be good for you to get out, take a break from everything." Rita hesitated. It had been so long since she had done anything for herself, and the thought of attending a grand wedding filled her with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "I don't know, Lucy. I'm not sure I belong at something like that." "Nonsense," Lucy replied, waving away Rita's concerns. "You need this, Rita. It's just one day, and I think you'll enjoy it. Plus, Nena can stay with my neighbor, Mrs. Obasi. She loves watching Nena. Come on, what do you say?" Rita looked at Nena, who was happily engrossed in her game, and then back at Lucy. Perhaps Lucy was right. Maybe it was time to do something different, to step out of the small world she had confined herself to since Junior left. She nodded slowly, a tentative smile forming on her lips. "Okay, I'll go. It might be nice to see something beautiful for a change." Lucy beamed, clapping her hands together. "That's the spirit. You won't regret it, I promise." The day of the wedding arrived, and Rita found herself dressed in a simple but elegant gown Lucy had helped her pick out. As they arrived at the grand venue, Rita couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and nervousness. The hall was adorned with flowers and twinkling lights, and the air buzzed with excitement as guests milled about, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Lucy, ever the professional, was in her element, directing the flow of events with a confident air. Rita watched her friend with admiration, grateful for the invitation but still feeling slightly out of place among the well-dressed crowd. As the ceremony began, Rita took a seat towards the back of the hall, preferring to observe from a distance. The bride made her entrance, stunning in her flowing white gown, and Rita felt a pang in her heart. She remembered her own wedding day, the hopes and dreams she had carried with her down the aisle. But those dreams had long since faded, replaced by the harsh reality of raising a child on her own. And then, as the groom stepped forward, Rita's world tilted on its axis. Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, she thought she must be dreaming. But there was no mistaking it. The groom, standing at the altar with a look of nervous anticipation, was Junior. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Junior, the man who had left her to fend for herself, the father of her child, was here, about to marry someone else. Rita's heart pounded in her chest, her vision narrowing as the shock threatened to overwhelm her. She felt the room closing in around her, the joyous celebration of the wedding becoming a distant hum in her ears. Lucy, who had been moving around the hall, noticed the change in Rita's demeanor and quickly made her way to her side. "Rita, what's wrong?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. Rita could barely speak, her eyes still fixed on Junior, who remained oblivious to her presence. That's him, she whispered, her voice trembling. That's Junior. Lucy followed Rita's gaze, confusion quickly turning to disbelief. Junior? You mean, you're Junior? Rita nodded, her hands shaking. He's marrying someone else, after everything. He's just moved on. Lucy's face hardened, and she immediately took Rita's hand, leading her out of the hall. Come on, we need to get you out of here. Outside, the cool air hit Rita's face, helping to clear the fog of shock that had enveloped her. She leaned against the wall, trying to steady her breathing, while Lucy rubbed her back soothingly. How could he do this? Rita asked, her voice cracking with pain. How could he just forget about us? Lucy shook her head, her expression one of anger and disbelief. I don't know, but you don't need to be here, Rita. You don't deserve this. Rita nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She knew Lucy was right, but the betrayal cut deep. The man she had once loved, the father of her child, had not only abandoned them but had seemingly erased their existence from his life. Back inside the hall, the wedding was unraveling. Word of Rita's presence and her connection to Junior had spread like wildfire among the guests, causing a ripple of shock and speculation. When Lola, the bride, caught wind of the situation, she was devastated. The celebration quickly turned into a scene of chaos, with guests whispering and pointing, and the once joyful atmosphere soured by the revelation. Unable to bear the humiliation, Lola called off the wedding, leaving Junior standing alone at the altar, his world crumbling around him. Meanwhile, Lucy managed to get Rita back to her apartment, where she collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and emotionally drained. As the reality of the day's events sank in, Rita knew that this was a turning point. Junior had chosen his path, and now she had to choose hers. The air was thick with tension as Rita sat on the edge of Lucy's couch, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to process the events that had just unfolded. The wedding, Junior's wedding, had been shattered in a matter of moments, and the shock of seeing him again after so many years still left her reeling. Rita could hardly believe it. The man who had left her and their unborn child had reappeared in her life, and not in the way she had ever imagined. Junior had moved on, or so it seemed, completely erasing the life they had shared together. But now, that carefully constructed facade of his was crumbling, just like the wedding he had tried to celebrate. How could he just act like we never existed? She whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief and hurt. Lucy sat beside her, gently taking her hand. Some people just run from their responsibilities, Rita. They think they can start over without dealing with their past. But you've been strong all these years. And now, look who's falling apart, him, not you. Rita nodded, but the ache in her chest remained. Seeing Junior again had torn open old wounds she had thought were long healed. But now, something else simmered beneath the surface, a growing sense of anger at the betrayal, not just of her, but of their daughter, Nena. I need to talk to him, Rita said suddenly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Lucy frowned, clearly concerned. Are you sure? After everything that just happened, do you really want to confront him now? Rita nodded, a steely resolve settling in her eyes. He needs to answer for what he did. I can't just let him walk away again without facing the consequences. Lucy squeezed her hand. I'll go with you. You shouldn't do this alone. Together, they left the apartment and made their way back to the wedding venue, where the once grand celebration had now devolved into a scene of confusion and disarray. Guests milled about in the courtyard, some whispering among themselves, others hastily making their exits, eager to escape the unfolding drama. As they approached the entrance, they saw Junior standing alone near the steps, his head in his hands. He looked up as they neared, and his eyes widened in shock and recognition when he saw Rita. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of all the unspoken words between them hanging heavy in the air. Junior looked pale, his once confident demeanor shattered by the sudden unraveling of his carefully constructed life. Rita, Junior began, but his voice faltered, as if he didn't know what to say or where to start. Rita's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her voice steady, her anger giving her strength. You left me, Junior. You left me and our child, and now you're here, pretending like we never existed. How could you do that? Junior's face crumpled, guilt and shame flooding his features. I was scared, Rita. We were so young, and I didn't know how to handle it. I thought it would be easier if I just left. Easier? Rita's voice rose, her hurt and anger finally spilling over. Easier for who? You disappeared, Junior. You left me to face everything on my own. You didn't even care what happened to us. Junior looked down, unable to meet her eyes. I know I was wrong, Rita. I was a coward. I didn't know how to face you, or our child. I'm sorry. Sorry? Rita echoed, her voice filled with disbelief. Sorry doesn't change anything, Junior. It doesn't change the fact that I had to raise our daughter alone, that I had to tell her every day that her father was just gone. Junior flinched at her words, the reality of what he had done sinking in. I never wanted to hurt you, Rita. I thought maybe if I started over, I could forget. Forget. Rita's voice was laced with bitterness. You can't just forget your responsibilities, Junior. You can't just erase your past like it never happened. We have a daughter, and she deserves better than this. The mention of their daughter seemed to strike a nerve in Junior, and he finally looked up, his eyes filled with regret. I want to make things right, Rita. I want to be a part of her life, if you'll let me. Rita shook her head, her resolve unwavering. It's too late, Junior. You can't just walk back into our lives like nothing happened. Nana and I have built a life without you, and we don't need you disrupting it. Before Junior could respond, a commotion from inside the hall drew their attention. Lola, the bride who had just been jilted, emerged from the venue, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. She had overheard the conversation and now stood before them, her hands trembling with barely contained fury. You lied to me, Lola spat, her voice trembling. You told me you had no ties, no past to worry about. And now I find out you have a wife and child you abandoned. Junior turned to Lola, his expression pleading. Lola, please, I can explain. Explain? Lola's voice cracked with emotion. There's nothing to explain, Junior. You're a liar, a coward, and I want nothing more to do with you. This wedding is over, and so are we. With that, Lola turned on her heel and marched away, leaving Junior standing there, his world in ruins. The guests who had been lingering outside began to disperse, murmuring among themselves as they walked away from the scene of the disaster. Rita watched Lola go, a mix of emotions swirling within her. She felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that Junior would now have to face the consequences of his actions, but also a deep sadness for the woman who had been blindsided by his lies. Junior stood there, staring after Lola, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked back at Rita, his eyes filled with regret. I've lost everything, haven't I? He asked quietly. Rita took a deep breath, her anger subsiding, replaced by a weary sadness. You made your choices, Junior. Now you have to live with them. Nana and I, we've moved on. And you need to do the same. With that, Rita turned and walked away, Lucy by her side, leaving Junior to stand alone in the wreckage of his broken life. As they walked back to Lucy's apartment, Rita felt a strange sense of closure. The man who had once been the center of her world was now nothing more than a painful memory, a reminder of a life she had left behind. And as she stepped into the warmth of Lucy's home, she knew that she and Nana would be okay. They had built a life together, one that no longer needed Junior's presence to be complete. The days following the disastrous wedding were a whirlwind of emotions for Rita. The confrontation with Junior had dredged up feelings she had buried long ago, but it also gave her a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. Back at Lucy's apartment, Rita spent the evening in quiet reflection, trying to process the finality of it all. Junior was no longer the ghost haunting her past. He was just a man who had made his choices and now had to live with the consequences. Lucy, always the supportive friend, was there for Rita every step of the way. She helped Rita navigate the emotional fallout, offering a shoulder to cry on and words of encouragement when they were needed most. They talked late into the night about the past, the future, and what it meant for Rita to finally close this chapter of her life. It was during one of these late-night conversations that Rita made a decision that would change the course of her life. I think it's time for a fresh start, Rita said, her voice soft but firm. I've been living in the shadow of my past for too long. I need to move forward, not just for me, but for Nana too. Lucy nodded in agreement, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. You're right, Rita. You deserve to be happy. So does Nana. What are you thinking? Rita hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision settling in. I'm thinking we need to leave this place. Start over somewhere new, where I'm not constantly reminded of everything that's happened. It's time for us to build a new life. And so, with Lucy's help, Rita began making plans to leave the city. It wasn't an easy decision after all. This was the place where she had given birth to Nana, where she had fought so hard to survive on her own. But it was also a place filled with painful memories, and Rita knew that in order to truly move on, she needed a clean break. Within a few weeks, Rita and Nana packed up their belongings and said their goodbyes. Lucy, ever the optimist, promised to visit them often and even helped Rita find a small house in a quieter town, far from the chaos of the city. The move was bittersweet, but as they drove away from the city, Rita felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was leaving behind the pain and uncertainty, and in its place was the hope of a new beginning. The town they moved to was peaceful, with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors who welcomed them with open arms. Rita quickly found work at a local business, and though it wasn't much, it was enough to support her and Nena. The simplicity of their new life brought Rita a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again. Nena, too, flourished in the new environment. She made friends easily, and her laughter filled their small house with joy. Watching her daughter thrive, Rita knew she had made the right choice. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined her. She was more than the woman Junior had abandoned. She was a mother, a provider, and a woman who had found the strength to move forward. Years passed, and their new life took on a comforting routine. Rita's small business grew slowly but steadily, and she became a respected member of the community. She and Nena were happy, and that was all that mattered. But the past has a way of creeping back, even when you think you've left it behind. One day, as Rita was closing up shop, she saw a familiar figure standing at the door. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized Junior, looking older and wearier than she remembered. He approached hesitantly, his eyes filled with regret. "Rita," Junior began, his voice trembling slightly. "I've been looking for you. I know I don't deserve it, but I needed to see you, to apologize, for everything." Rita felt a rush of emotions, anger, sadness, even a flicker of the love she had once felt for him, but she remained calm. "Junior, why are you here?" "I made a lot of mistakes," Junior admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I was a coward, and I hurt you and Nena in ways I can never take back. I've lost everything, Rita. And now, all I want is a chance to make things right, if you'll let me." Rita looked at him, seeing the man he had become, broken, filled with regret. But she also saw the man he had been, the one who had abandoned her when she needed him most. She took a deep breath, her heart steady as she spoke. "Junior, I've moved on. Nena and I have built a life without you, and we're happy. I don't hate you, but I don't need you in my life anymore. We're doing just fine on our own." Junior's shoulders slumped, his last hope slipping away. "I understand," he whispered, his voice heavy with defeat. "I'm sorry, Rita. I really am." With that, Junior turned and walked away, leaving Rita standing alone in the quiet of the evening. She watched him go, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It was the end of something, but it was also the beginning of something new, a future where she and Nena could truly be free from the past. As she closed the door and turned off the lights, Rita felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had faced her past, confronted the man who had caused her so much pain, and come out stronger on the other side. Now, she was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold, with the knowledge that she and Nena would face it together, just as they always had. This story teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our actions and the impact they have on the lives of others. It reminds us that running away from our problems only creates deeper wounds, not just for ourselves but for those we leave behind. True strength lies in facing our mistakes, learning from them, and striving to do better. It also highlights the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome adversity, rebuild, and find happiness even after experiencing deep pain and betrayal. Rita's journey shows us that with determination and the support of loved ones, it is possible to move forward and create a brighter future, no matter how dark the past may have been. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories like this. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share your comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Your feedback means the world to us, and we're excited to interact with you. Until our next story, keep smiling and stay positive. See you soon.